Chamath said Xi Jinping and Friedberg said Putin. Who do we think is our biggest political winner going forward? Who do you pick, Sacks, biggest political winner for 2023? Who will be your biggest political winner for 2023?
Well, I went a little bit outside the box here because I think we're going to have gridlock in Washington. So I'm not expecting a ton to be coming out of Washington over the next year. My pick for biggest political winner is Asian American college applicants. There are two Supreme Court decisions that the court heard on Halloween last year. There was a lawsuit against Harvard and another lawsuit against UNC by a group called Students for Fair Admissions, and that they maintain that Harvard and UNC violate Title VI of the Civil Rights Act because Asian American applicants are far less likely to be admitted than similarly qualified applicants from other groups. And the federal courts in Boston and North Carolina rejected this argument, but the Supreme Court took up the cases. So they kind of went out of their way to hear this. And I think that they are going to
They're going to repeal affirmative action.
I think the majority will rule to strike down these policies that really discriminate against Asian Americans. And I think they're the last group in America where it seems to be okay to discriminate against. And I think the Supreme Court is going to find that unconstitutional.
Chamath, any thoughts there? You have brought this up multiple times on the podcast over the last 2 years.
I have said that this was unfortunately affirmative action when it started, I think had very, very good intentions. And I still think that there's a place for it. The problem is that these very liberal institutions decided to play judge, jury, and executioner on which minorities counted in affirmative action. And that's not what the intention was. The intention was to look at the establishment and their ability to get their progeny into these incredible schools, even when they didn't deserve to be there. And so I think this was always an issue of classism that was disguised as racism. And people who were in the upper classes of society have always had an edge. You had the legacy admissions into Harvard. You had people, the Kushners very famously, right? Like the $5 million check from the father that got the son into the school, all of this stuff. It's been well written about. And whether or not those things are right isn't the point. I think the point is that there are folks in emerging lower middle classes who have the potential to crush. And those kids should have a chance. And you can't just decide who those kids are based on the color of their skin. And in this case, what happened was some blacks were still allowed in, some Hispanics were allowed in, but Asian Americans broadly were discriminated. And that was a really stupid outcome. You cannot punish kids for willing to work their ass off. And I think that that was the unfortunate outcome of what affirmative action has become by 2022. So it is going to get repealed. The reason it's going to get repealed is that, we have case law that very clearly states that any institution that accepts federal funds cannot have any form of discrimination. And this is how these folks who have tried to repeal affirmative action have taken up this lawsuit. And hopefully the outcome is a more meritocratic system that also tries to create a plurality of different people from different backgrounds.
Friedberg, any thoughts? If not, your biggest political winner for 2023?
My biggest political winner for 2023 is MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. I think that Saudi Arabia will have the most important year in kind of the modern era in terms of their role. I don't know if you guys saw this Reuters report from a few weeks ago, but there's kind of a deepening discussion about the oil yuan trade, in that Saudi would sell oil to China and they would get paid in yuan. Saudi Arabia sits at the intersection of the United States, Russia, and China. They have relationships with all three nations. And in the kind of conflict and power struggle that is underway, I think that ultimately the direction of where global currency kind of reserves will be taken, and the importance of these great nations and who sits atop whom can actually be dictated and significantly influenced by MBS this year, by some of the deals and trades he might put in place, and the kind of partnerships he might forge. I think as a result, you will see him kind of rise in terms of influence, not in terms of, hey, the world has accolades for this guy. But I think in terms of global influence, he will rocket ship to kind of the top because of this kind of jockeying he can now do between these three great nation states and defining, what's going to happen with the U.S. and what's going to happen with China and what's going to happen with currency reserves.
Great selection.
I mean, primacy.
Great selection.
The shitty thing, by the way, about your selection is that Biden, our explicit stance is unfortunately quite confrontational with MBS. And you saw that play out in Q4. We asked them to ease up on OPEC Plus to introduce supply cuts, and they did some nominal 100,000 barrel per day cut. Didn't do much of anything. There was an article, to your point, Friedberg, just recently about Saudi really doubling down on getting the oil out of the ground and monetizing their petrochemicals. So there's just going to be a glut of supply in the market. And we have the least amount of influence with Saudi Arabia than we've ever had. And it seems like we could change that if we decided to. But I think Biden has taken this very confrontational approach, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Their stated intent is to diversify away from oil and into technology and other kind of emerging growth economies. That's why they funded the Vision Fund. That's why MBS made that big kind of visit to Silicon Valley a few years ago. And there is technology that they want to import into Saudi Arabia and they want to have ownership in around the world. And if the US is creating a barrier for them to import US tech into Saudi or for Saudi to kind of invest in the US, but China and Russia have open arms, and all they want is for Saudi to start doing trades in yuan, it's going to happen. And I think that's where this guy has kind of a real opportunity to shift the global economic dynamic.
Say what you will about Trump, he had open dialogue with North Korea, China, Russia, MBS.
Keep your enemies close. Sure.
You want to be able to talk to anybody, and he was able to talk to anybody. Now, you also want to be able to say, hey, listen, you can't dismember a journalist like Khashoggi, and you need to be able to have both of those ideas in your head. You can't be rigid in foreign policy. You have to be fluid and keep people at the table talking. Chamath, who is your who do you predict will be the big political winner of 2023? Chamath's prediction, everybody. Go ahead.
I really like spread trades, right? Okay, where you go long something and short another. So I'd like to pair my biggest political winner with my biggest political loser for 2023.
Okay.
And I am going to focus on the Republican nomination, and I am going to go long Nikki Haley, and I am going to go short Ron DeSantis. Now, let me explain.
Sacks. Again, if you're not watching Sacks right now, he is ready to interject. Go, Chamath.
So I think that all of this nonsense, for example, in the House Speaker race, all of the midterm results, what it really speaks to is people are getting exhausted with the lunatic fringes of both parties. That's point number one. So that favors moderates as an emergent class. And point number two is that if you look back through many, many cycles of Republican and Democratic nominations, it is a very negative thing to be in the lead so early going into the Iowa caucuses in January. And so if you put those two things together, the risk is that DeSantis decays, things emerge, people attack him because he's the clear front runner. And the opportunity, just like it was for Trump in 2016 or for Clinton or for George Bush, not Herbert Walker, but W, is to emerge from the back. And so if I think about a moderate person who can emerge from the back, who can consolidate the ranks, they should probably be from the South. They will have a lot of these purple compromises that Sacks mentioned in their policy program. And they will have a history of winning and a history of normalcy. And so I think that of all of the places where you could ever elect a woman as president of the United States, I think it will come from the Republicans before it comes from the Democrats. I think the Democrats are unfortunately increasingly judgmental. And I think it's very difficult for a woman to emerge there. But I do think that Nikki Haley has a shot. So I'm going to go long Nikki Haley, and I'm going to short Ron DeSantis.
Okay, I like it. A spread trade for his prediction. Well done. Before Sacks, you interject, let me just do mine, and because then you'll have two to interject to. I was looking at Biden and Trump and thinking, which one of these is going to have the big win in 2023? Since they're the two biggest, I think, players. I have a prediction for Trump. I think he's going to lose 50 pounds on the Ozempic. Everybody loves a weight loss story. I think he is going to be indicted by Garland.
Is he on? Wait a minute. Sorry, he's on Ozempic?
No, I'm predicting an Ozempic run, and he's going to drop 40, 50 pounds. Then we're going to have a svelte Trump get indicted by Garland, and the debates and the rigmarole with DeSantis. I think he's going to go after DeSantis based on weight and height, and then he's going to win the nomination in 24. And we're going to have Trump versus Biden. But this is a crazy prediction here. I think we're going to have a settlement. I think he's going to agree to not run and get the pardon. This is a crazy prediction, I know. But I think he loses the weight. He wins the nom. He gets indicted. And then he gets the Richard Nixon pardon, global pardon for all of the shit he's done. Sacks, you can reply now to these two crazy predictions. The spread's right in mine.
I mean, this is like proof positive that everything you have to say about Trump is an act of projection.
Go ahead.
I mean, like Ozempic? Are you talking about yourself or Trump?
Strike. Boom.
Yeah, tell us your Ozempic story,
I did. Part of my weight loss journey has been Ozempic and Supergood. Yes, both of those things and fasting. Right. Have you, Sacks, done any Ozempic?
Yeah, I've tried it.
Yeah. I think everybody should be looking into this if you have weight issues. It's a great new Wegovy.
I would say it even more broadly. I've been reading a lot about these GLP-1s, and I got to tell you, statins are a clear wonder drug.
Yes. Okay.
I think that the 50-year longitudinal data on its value is pretty unimpeachable. Metformin, even taken prophylactically, has shown incredible benefits for cell regeneration, longevity, and glucose management. And the reality is, let's just take a step back. The American diet, we're all pre-diabetic. Okay, so let's just not beat around the bush. The way that Americans eat and our food supply, and also probably in Western Europe, is pre-diabetic by definition. It's shit. It's trash. So metformin makes a lot of sense. And again, its longitudinal data is incredible. But I got to tell you, the early data on these GLP-1s are unbelievable.
It's extraordinary. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, I would lose half a pound a week when I would diet.
No, but what I'm saying is just drop 10. It's beyond that. What I'm talking about is insulin response. It's cardiac health. And so if this data tracks like this, man, you're just going to want to put everybody on these GLP-1s.
Well, I just want to also put a disclaimer out here. Do your own research, work with your doctors, whether it's for metformin or Ozempic, but I had great results on it. I recommend if you're struggling with weight loss like I did for many years, you talk to your doctor about it. That's it. It's not a commercial for Wegovy or Ozempic, but I do think these things are going to change the world.
Mounjaro.
Well, and they're getting better, and it seems like people with diabetes are on them for life. So if your question is like, if I could do this for a year to lose weight, I think diabetics are on it for life. So when I made my decision, again, work with your doctors, not random podcasts or venture capitalists for your health advice, I was like, well, if all of these people who have diabetes are going to on it for years.
Unless it's non-toxic, go get a pre-nuvo scan. Just make sure
absolutely
you got no
hiding
cancers.
So there you have it. Those are our predictions. Sacks, did you want to respond to any of those?
I want the Sacks to react to my spread trade.
Yeah. Okay. So look, I think, if you're going on a betting site, I think that you could place that bet that Chamath made pretty cheaply, and probably it's has some good upside to it. So I don't criticize it as a bet. Do I think it's actually going to happen? No. And I think the reason is this, that if you look at what's happening right now with the speaker's race, there's two very clear wings in the Republican Party. There's the establishment wing, and then there's kind of this populist MAGA wing. And the candidate, whoever it is, in 24 needs to unite those two wings. And I think this is really the best argument for DeSantis, is he's widely accepted by both. I think Nikki Haley's problem is that she's very well regarded within the establishment wing of the Republican Party, but she has no meaningful support within the populist wing. And so I don't think she's capable of bringing the party together, at least at this point in time. She would have to prove, let's call it populist bona fides, that she just doesn't have right now. So this is why I think, DeSantis, he does have front runner risk. You're right, that people are going to keep taking shots at him as long as he's the front runner. But
all right,
he's capable of uniting the party in a way that it desperately needs right now, as we're seeing with the Kevin McCarthy thing.